Hi guys. So this video is intended to show you how in Eclipse you can generate a JUnit test for any of your Java classes. I'm not going to cover test-driven development (TDD), nor am I going to cover the in-depth or in detail how to write JUnits, how to write test cases, and test methods, and the purpose behind it, the logic behind it, all of that. I'm not going to go into that kind of detail in this video. This video is just intended to show you a feature of Eclipse, for those kind of learning Eclipse, how you can generate a JUnit automatically using the Eclipse IDE off of one of your Java classes. I do cover TDD in a subsequent video, and I go into further detail about JUnits in general. So check out my other videos for that. But let's go ahead. I've got a demo project already open in Eclipse here, as you see, JUnit demos, with one package in the source folder, and inside that, excuse me, inside that package, one class called template, which I have open in the editor here. So let's first create a folder for our JUnits, our generated JUnits, to go into. Let's say we don't want them to go into our source folder, but rather we'd like them to go into a separate test folder. So that, say, if we wanted to write scripts for deployment and so forth, we could filter out, our test classes and so forth. To do that, click on your project, right-click, and I'm going to show you how to do this using the context menus. You can also, of course, do it through hotkeys or through the main menus and so forth. There's a million different ways to do it. I'm going to show you via the context menu because demonstrating hotkeys in a video is kind of tricky. But you can go ahead and use the hotkeys alternative if you prefer. So you'll select New, Other. Oh, sorry. Actually, let me go back. New, Source folder. Okay. And then you give your ancillary source folder a name. We're going to call it test and finish. And it's generated that here. Here you see an ancillary source folder called test. Now this is called a source folder even though it's named test because you can have Java source files in it, and they will be compiled along with all the classes in your SRC folder when you build the project. So they're sourced just like anything in the SRC folder. So now we have our little folder for the JUnits to go into. Now let's generate a JUnit for our one class. This class I have open in the editor. It's called template. It's a very simple Java class that I just created just to use for sake of demo. So if you right click on your template class and open the context menu, and again you can do this using hotkeys if you prefer. That can be a little faster, but hotkeys are not very good for demonstration purposes, obviously. But New, Other, scroll down to Java, and Java's open here, and then under Java JUnit, and then JUnit test case, select that. Next, and next it opens a page in the wizard where you can specify options. You can specify whether you want to create a JUnit 3 test or a JUnit 4 test, the version of JUnit to use, and that determines which jar files, which library gets included on your build path. So we'll select JUnit 4 because that's pretty ubiquitous right now. That's annotations based. So any class can be made into a JUnit test using JUnit 4 annotations. In the next field down, we can select where we want our generated JUnit to go. By default, it has selected the SRC folder, but you can change that by typing in a new name like the test folder. Or if you prefer, you can use the browse button here, and if you open that, it allows you to browse through your project and select a folder for them to go into. We've selected test. The package is pre-populated. You can change that if you want to change the package name. It's generated a default name for the test using the name of our class under test, which is template. And it's just appended the word test to that, so template test. And then underneath that, you can specify the superclass of this test, of this JUnit. And the superclass by default is class object, but let's say you had a hierarchy of other JUnits where you've added certain functionality or certain special, like starter JUnit classes that you wanted to use to inherit certain functionality and features. You could change the superclass here, and you could browse. It has a browse button, so you could select do a type search, a traditional Eclipse type search, We're just going to leave it as java.lang.object. Below that, you can specify methods to stub, stub methods to create in your generated JUnit. You can select a setup method, so it generates a default starting setup method. The setup method will have an @before annotation, and it will be run before every test. And that's where you would put code that you need to run before every test to do any initialization, such as connecting to databases or opening input streams or reading files, loading files, that sort of thing. In teardown is sort of the inverse of that. It will be run once after every test, and a teardown method is annotated with the @after annotation. In that, you would close any resources, release any resources that you maybe acquired in the setup menu. You would release those and clean things up in the teardown method. Both of these are optional. They only exist if you need them. You can check or uncheck them. We're going to leave them checked. The other feature to generate comments we don't really need. And then it allows you to change the class which is under test, the class under test. However, in this case, it's pre-populated it with the class template because we started from there. And that's correct, so we're going to accept that. And click Next. Next, the final page of the wizard allows you to specify which public methods in your class under test that you want to test. So you want to generate test methods for your CUT methods, the methods in class template that you want to generate tests for. You can select those here. In our class template, we only have a constructor and we have the render template method, and we only want to test, in our case, the render template method, so we'll select that. You'll notice that it also allows you to select inherited methods from class templates superclasses if you wanted to, but class template is inherited from, it extends java.lang.object, so we don't need to test any of the methods in that class, so we're going to leave that blank. And the other options you can leave blank and click Finish. Okay, so you see that it has generated our JUnit class, if you look over to the left here, and it has put it inside the test folder that we created. It's put it into a starting package. The package name by default is the same as the package name of the class under test. And inside that, it's placed the JUnit, and it's opened the JUnit up in the JUnit editor. Now, I'm not going to go into very much detail about what a JUnit is and how it works and so forth, and how you write JUnits and what you're intending to do and your goals should be. I'm also not going to go into TDD or test-driven development. This video was purely intended for people learning Eclipse, so they can learn that feature of automatically generating a JUnit for any given Java class. You see that it has created the 3 methods that we specified in the wizard when we check those checkboxes. It has our setup method with an @before annotation, and this will be run once before any test. It's a stub, so it has no implementation. However, you could add implementation if you wanted. You could add code here, and this is where you would add the code that you need to do any setup. Sorry, excuse me. Okay. It also has our teardown method, and in there you would add any code that you need to do to clean up or to close resources and release connections and that sort of thing. And then we have our test method, our lone test method. And you see that any test method is annotated with the @test annotation. By default, the wizard generates it with an automatic fail call, a call to the JUnit library method called fail, and that method will programmatically cause the test to fail. So when you run it in a JUnit runner, it'll show up as a failed test. Of course, this is useless, this test. You have to delete the fail call and replace it with your real test code. And we'll go over how to do that in a subsequent video. That's not the purpose of this video. However, I just wanted to show you guys how you can generate a JUnit from any of your Java classes in Eclipse. And then once it's generated, now we don't have any real implementation here in our class, but I can show you the process for running it, for running your JUnit. You want to first select the test class, or the JUnit, let's say. And you can do that either by clicking in the editor, making sure that the editor has focus where the test class is open, or by in the package explorer on the left by selecting the icon for that test class. So by selecting template test. And then again, I'll show you the context menu approach to doing this, to running it, rather than the hotkey approach. But there is a hotkey for running your test. But that's kind of hard to show in a video. So let's run it via the context menu, run as, and select unit tests. Eclipse, you can see the progress window is starting something up. It's starting up the JUnit test runner. And over on the left, you see that the JUnit test runner has been opened. And you see that it has run our one test. And because the test is programmed to fail, it has failed. You see that 1 failure, 0 errors, and it's run 1 out of our 1 test. If that test had passed, this would be green. So let's change this. Let's get rid of this fail statement inside the test, and let's rerun it. And this time, when it runs, it should pass. It should be green, and there you go. And that's the red and the green you hear referenced in red-green refactor, which is another topic we'll cover in the subsequent videos. Okay guys, hope you liked it. Thanks a lot. Check out my other videos on JUnits and writing JUnits. I go into further detail about writing test methods and also writing setup methods and so forth. And also I cover test-driven development, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Hope you liked it.